Hi, Stuart Sutton at 1 Acre Plus Homes. Hope you're having a great day. I'm going to cover something today that, well, it's been a source of frustration for many real estate agents and buyers and sellers too. So we're going to talk about why people get into this situation and how to avoid getting into this situation. Let's take a look. I'm going to preface this by telling you about my father-in-law. He was a man of exquisite taste. He had a gorgeous desk, leather top, inlaid wood, beautiful detailed carving. It was stunning. He used it to work from in his home. Well, they rearranged their home and were doing some different things with it and realized we don't really have a place for it. So we decided to sell it. One of the neighbors had had their eye on it and really thought, man, if that desk ever goes up for sale, I'm on it. So the neighbor offered to buy it. They reached an agreement and the neighbor came to pick it up and he brought the cash. Well, he handed the cash to my father-in-law, who realized very quickly that it was not what they agreed on. He pointed this out and the neighbor said, well, that's all I have. I hope that's okay. Whereas my father-in-law said, no, it's not okay. We had an agreement. The neighbor left in a huff. He came back a little bit later, picked up the desk, threw the correct amount of cash on the ground in front of my father-in-law's feet. Now, you might have acted differently. I might have reacted differently. But my father-in-law was patient and kind and understood that that was just that guy's personality. How does that apply to you and your real estate transaction? Well, let's start down that path. This won't take but a couple of minutes. When an offer comes in, you have the option as a home seller to accept, counter, or reject. I would really not consider rejection as a real viable option unless it's just an absurd situation. But I've taken some absurd initial offers and taken them to the closing table as recently as the last few months. So that accept, counter, reject as being three options seems pretty easy, doesn't it? So when the buyer makes the offer, the seller can accept, counter, or reject. If the seller counters, the buyer has the same three options: accept, counter, or reject. Well, an agent called me totally frustrated. I've helped train and manage a lot of agents over the years, and a lot of them, I'm very blessed, still contact me for assistance and guidance sometimes. This agent called me, was about to tear their hair out. This situation was very frustrating to everybody involved. Here's what happened. It seems very obvious what should happen, but here's what happened. Buyer made the offer, the seller countered the offer, and the buyer accepted their counter. Done, right? Well, the buyer and the buyer's agent thought so, but that was not the case. Here's what happened. The buyer made an offer to the seller countered, but they did not counter in writing. The buyer accepted the seller's counter, but it was not in writing. So therefore, it really wasn't even official. So when the seller sent over the changes, initialed, in writing, the buyer agent received them and saw there were different changes, additional changes. It was completely different counter offer. So of course the buyer and the buyer's agent were quite taken aback. When the buyer's agent asked the listing agent, what did the seller do and why did they do it? The listing agent simply said, well, they thought of some more changes they wanted. So basically the seller responded verbally. The agent put it into an email. And yes, you've heard court precedents that email and text negotiation are upheld in court sometimes, but there has to be some very precise processes in place, as I've said before, and that usually does not happen. So this is considered the same as a verbal. So the buyer now has a decision. They're pretty much thrown into turmoil. Can we trust this seller? They reached an agreement with us and then they changed it after we reached an agreement? Do we just accept these new changes they made just because we want the house? I mean, what do we do here? Well, the verbal contract is basically meaningless, and you need to understand that. If you decide to move forward with a verbal contract, then you need to understand that it doesn't have to be adhered to. Now, does the listing agent who sent an email bear responsibility because the buyer agent received that email and their buyer accepted it? Well, could be. But the bottom line is that the seller can say, they didn't put down what I said. So the bottom line again is email, text, verbal, not a good way to negotiate a contract. It should be in writing. It should be in writing every time. I had one, as a matter of fact, just recently where the buyer agent tried to send a verbal counter and follow up by putting it in an email, and I asked for it to be put on the contract. If the agent pushes back on that, you simply say, gosh, I'm so sorry, but my sellers would really be much more likely to respond positively if we have it in writing. If they continue to push back, then we say, hey, I'm so sorry, but we sent you a contract in writing. What if we'd have sent you an email or a text saying, here's our offer? You wouldn't have really considered that valid. Well, would you please do us the same courtesy? The bottom line is that agents try to do this because it saves time. Does it? Well, yeah. But when you run into situations like this, it throws everything into chaos. If you want to do things right, follow the process and put it in writing. I hope that makes sense. I put another video up here for you. I hope you enjoyed this one. And this particular video is for buyers. It talks about our buyer guarantee. If you buy a home on an acre or more, you're not totally satisfied, we'll sell it for you and not charge you a commission. Remember, it's your choice. Make it a powerful day. Subscribe if you like what you're seeing, and I hope to see you on the next video.